If you have topics you would like to have us discuss on the Aging Well podcast, please click on the links in the episode description to send us a text or record your message or comments. We'd love to hear from you and how we can help you age well. If you benefit from the Aging Well podcast and would like to support the content financially, please click on the Support the Show link or support our affiliates and advertisers. Welcome to the Aging Well podcast. I'm Jeff Armstrong here with Corbin Bruton. In this and the episodes that follow, we will share candid discussions on aging and hear from the experts. We are here to inform and encourage as we experience, aging. Anabolic resistance, a phenomenon marked by reduced muscle protein synthesis and impaired muscle maintenance, is a significant concern in aging populations. In this episode, we explore the factors contributing to anabolic resistance, ranging from age-related declines in muscle protein synthesis to alterations in cellular signaling pathways. We share insights on the roles of resistance training, protein intake optimization, and other strategies to mitigate anabolic resistance, and highlight actionable steps to combat anabolic resistance, maintain muscle health, and age well. Corbin, have you heard of anabolic resistance?
Anabolic resistance? No. If I had to take an educated guess, I think it would have to do with muscle or hormones, but what is it?
Anabolic resistance refers to a decreased ability of the body to build muscle or synthesize protein in response to various stimuli, such as resistance exercise or protein intake. It's commonly observed in aging populations, but can also be seen in other conditions such as obesity, diabetes, or chronic illness.
Well, what causes anabolic resistance? Is it something that's inevitable as we age?
Anabolic resistance can purportedly result from a variety of factors, including impaired muscle protein synthesis, reduced sensitivity to anabolic hormones like insulin and growth hormone, and alterations in cellular signaling pathways. Whether it's inevitable is a great question. Let's circle back to this question later in the episode.
So anabolic resistance can hinder muscle maintenance and growth, leading to muscle loss or sarcopenia and functional decline, particularly in older adults. How is it addressed?
Addressing anabolic resistance often involves strategies such as resistance training, optimizing protein intake, managing underlying health conditions, and sometimes pharmacological interventions can enhance muscle protein synthesis.
So I would assume there is credible evidence to support the concept of anabolic resistance in relation to aging.
Several studies have shown that older adults can exhibit reduced muscle protein synthesis rates and diminished muscle mass accrual compared to younger individuals, even when exposed to similar anabolic stimuli like resistance exercise or protein ingestion.
Well, what factors contribute to anabolic resistance as we age?
Several factors contribute to anabolic resistance in aging, including decreased muscle protein synthesis, reduced sensitivity to anabolic stimuli, and altered muscle metabolism, as well as age-related neurological changes.
So, older adults may have an impaired ability to synthesize new muscle proteins in response to protein intake or exercise. Does this mean that resistance training is ineffective?
Not necessarily. Of course, there are benefits of resistance training other than just hypertrophy. Weight training can, of course, increase protein synthesis. There is also evidence that the branched-chain amino acid leucine can promote protein synthesis. So in addition to resistance training, increasing leucine in our diet may help.
Aging muscles may become less responsive to anabolic hormones such as insulin, growth hormones, and insulin-like growth hormone factor 1, which are important for muscle growth and repair. But exercise makes the muscles more responsive to these hormones. Is the muscle less responsive regardless of activity and diet?
Maybe, maybe not. Even if the muscle is less responsive as we age, weight training can offset this.
So weight training is more effective at maintaining muscle mass regardless of age.
I would argue that regardless of age, weight training is beneficial. In addition, strength is more important for aging well than simply muscle size alone.
And we talk about that a lot on this podcast, the importance of resistance training and, the fact you got to start when you're younger and it just kind of carries on throughout the rest of your life. It's kind of like our little metaphor of adding to your muscular bank, right?
Yeah, that's, I think, your metaphor, but yeah, we can go with that. You like that muscle bank and the banking thing. You should have gone into finance.
You gotta invest in your physical strength at a young age to carry on.
Sure.
Well, especially since aging changes muscle metabolism, including increase of inflammation and oxidative stress. This may also contribute to an anabolic resistance in older adults.
It does. And age-related declines in motor unit recruitment and neuromuscular function can also affect muscle protein synthesis and muscle mass maintenance.
Declines in motor unit recruitment and neuromuscular functions, that sounds like it might be related to inactivity. So how do we address anabolic resistance, particularly in those in older adults?
Activity is a key factor. Remember, though, that anabolic resistance also occurs with other conditions such as obesity, diabetes, or chronic stress.
And many of these are actually associated with inactivity as well.
That is true. And addressing anabolic resistance in older adults typically involves a combination of resistance training to stimulate muscle protein synthesis, optimizing protein intake to support muscle repair and growth, and potentially using nutritional supplements or pharmacological interventions to enhance muscle protein synthesis. These strategies can help mitigate age-related muscle loss or sarcopenia and maintain functional independence and quality of life in older individuals.
And, of course, maintaining a healthy body fat and having a healthy diet and our sleep hygiene will play a role. So how does resistance training help counteract anabolic resistance?
Well, resistance training involves contracting muscles against external resistance, such as weights or resistance bands. This mechanical tension triggers a cascade of molecular signaling pathways that lead to increased muscle protein synthesis. Even in older adults with anabolic resistance, resistance training can still effectively stimulate muscle protein synthesis, albeit to a lesser extent compared to younger individuals.
So we can still see gains when we age. They'll just be smaller than when we were younger.
Correct. But personally, I think it can be affected by our training history. The younger we start, the better the quality of hypertrophy and strength we may see later in life.
Hence my bank metaphor.
Yeah, there you go.
Resistance training not only increases muscle protein synthesis, but also enhances muscle quality by promoting muscle hypertrophy and reducing muscle fat infiltration. This can improve muscle function, strength, and metabolic health in aging adults.
It can. And resistance training can improve insulin sensitivity in skeletal muscle, which is important for glucose uptake and utilization. By enhancing insulin sensitivity, resistance training may help overcome insulin resistance associated with aging and promote anabolic responses to nutrients and hormones.
Regular resistance training can also help preserve functional capacity and independence in aging adults by maintaining muscle mass, strength, and power. This can reduce the risk of falls, fractures, and disabilities, improving overall quality of life, helping one to age well.
And lastly, resistance training can stimulate mitochondrial biogenesis and improve mitochondrial function in skeletal muscle. Remember, mitochondria are the powerhouse of the cell and play a critical role in energy production and metabolism. Enhancing mitochondrial function may contribute to improved muscle function and metabolic health in aging adults.
So it could simultaneously spike metabolism as well as we age?
Well, I don't like that phrase of, in terms of spiking metabolism and all that kind of stuff. It will have a positive effect on our overall basal metabolic rate. And so in that regard, yeah, we're kind of spiking metabolism. We're using more calories. I think we kind of often get misled with that whole phrase about increasing metabolism and I have a slow metabolism or fast metabolism and all that. But having more muscle mass is going to overall increase our basic basal metabolic metabolism, but it's also going to enable us to improve our metabolism, to get more energy out of the food stuff that we consume, or we can get it more readily to be able to do more activity. So the mitochondria are, the reason they're called the powerhouse of the cell is that that's where ATP, which is the important molecule for muscle contraction, is the bulk of it's going to be produced through the electron transport chain and all the stuff you remember from physiology of exercise.
The Krebs cycle.
Yeah. And the tricarboxylic acid cycle, to be more scientifically correct. I don't call it the Krebs cycle quite anymore unless you're in a biology class. But yeah, so the mitochondria, if we have more mitochondria and we have healthier mitochondria, then we have a better capacity to utilize oxygen and to perform physical work. So we'll have later on this season, we're going to have Dr. Phil Yeske back to talk a little bit more about mitochondrial health and mitochondrial disease. But yeah, mitochondria are very, very important to a healthy metabolism within the body.
So if we're adding resistance training, by doing so, we're increasing the mitochondria, and we're in a roundabout way producing more energy because our muscles are utilizing more energy. And so in order to replenish that energy, you want to make sure that you're eating adequate amount of food, and to maintain that muscle mass, prioritize protein, which we just talked about, leucine being one of the amino acid. So it's kind of like a full cycle. As you add your resistance training, then you're replenishing the muscles with protein, which break down into that amino acid, which just kind of keeps this chain going to benefit one to age well.
Yeah. And in the literature, they talk even that in the absence of resistance training, even an increased protein in the diet for the aging adult is going to have a benefit of increasing our ability to synthesize protein and actually decrease the breakdown of muscle mass. So there's kind of that balance between muscle protein synthesis and muscle protein metabolism or breakdown in the muscle. And so we want to have that synthesis of protein be in a more positive side. And so simply just increasing protein intake can actually favor that balance a bit more. I discussed my epigenetics test with True Diagnostic co-founder Hannah Wendt in episode 162. Epigenetic testing measures baseline and changes in your pace of aging, giving you the power to steer your anti-aging or health and wellness journey in the right direction. I learned that I am aging well. Click on the affiliate link in the episode description, use the promo code AGEWELL, and receive a 12% discount on your epigenetics test and monitor your pace of aging.
Well, we touched on this a bit, but what factors contribute to anabolic resistance in aging?
Well, anabolic resistance in aging is influenced by both genetic factors and lifelong activity levels, as well as other environmental and lifestyle factors. Genetic factors can influence muscle mass, muscle fiber composition, metabolic rate, hormone levels, and other factors that affect anabolic responses to exercise and nutrition. Some individuals may have genetic predispositions that make them more resistant to muscle loss with aging, while others may be more susceptible to sarcopenia and anabolic resistance. We mentioned lifelong physical activity levels. Lifelong physical activity levels, including exercise habits and occupational activity, have a profound effect on muscle mass, strength, and metabolic health throughout life. Regular physical activity, particularly resistance training, can help muscle mass, stimulate muscle protein synthesis, and improve metabolic function, reducing the risk of anabolic resistance and sarcopenia in aging adults. I believe we've talked in previous episodes about the role of increasing myonuclei early in life through resistance training.
We sure have. That was in episode 116, Old Man Strong or Aging Well.
Yeah, old man strong. My favorite phrase, old man strength. One of my favorite phrases. And of course, adequate protein intake is essential for muscle maintenance and repair, particularly in older adults who have anabolic resistance. So dietary factors such as protein quality, timing, and distribution throughout the day can influence muscle protein synthesis rates and anabolic responses to exercise.
We've also talked about the role of branched chain amino acid, especially leucine, in muscle protein synthesis, particularly regarding aging well.
Finally, sleep quality and stress levels, medication use, chronic disease status, and other lifestyle factors can also impact anabolic resistance in aging. For example, poor sleep quality or chronic stress can impair muscle recovery and protein synthesis, while certain medications or health conditions may affect hormone levels and metabolic function. I found it interesting in my interview with Dr. Neustadt in episode 152, the implications of medicines for osteoporosis and other health factors. I would be surprised if the increased use of medications as we age doesn't play a role in anabolic resistance.
And Emily and Mitch Kleonsky in episode 120 talk about the effects at many of the same medication have on the risk of all types of dementia. Sleep apnea was a factor as well.
Yeah, I'm not so quick to accept anything as simply an effect of aging. So while genetic predispositions to anabolic resistance may exist, lifestyle factors such as regular exercise, proper nutrition, and overall health habits can help mitigate its effects and promote healthy aging. Regardless of genetic factors, engaging in physical activity, especially resistance training, adopting a balanced diet rich in protein, and establishing good sleep hygiene can significantly improve muscle health and function in aging adults.
So in a roundabout way, it seems that resistance training combined with proper intake of protein and a good balanced diet with the addition of sleep prioritization, it's kind of the win all end all to age well.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many benefits in there, and if obesity and some of these diabetes and things are also factors in anabolic resistance, and we have to kind of circle back to what are the causes of those, and a lot of that is central to inactivity, poor diet, and those types of things. And it's interesting as you kind of read through the literature, and the literature is not super clear on this whole concept of anabolic resistance. I mean, it certainly exists. There is certainly a pattern that as we age, we are going to see decreased muscle protein synthesis and a certain level of sarcopenia. But the biggest connection with that is activity level. And when we look at the role of obesity, obesity tends to increase as we become less and less active. And in looking in the literature, I mean, they talk a lot about the role of proteins, and particularly amino acids like leucine. They talk about resistance training. And interestingly, some of the literature, and we're going to link several articles in the discussion or the episode description, but several of the articles talk in terms of increasing the quantity of protein and the frequency of protein. So upping that, and the numbers that are given are generally a little bit lower than our recommendation of 1 gram per pound of body weight. So I think I would stick with our recommendation of 1 gram per pound of body weight, dividing that into multiple meals, and a higher frequency seems to be better as well. So it kind of works against some of that idea of intermittent fasting, especially for long-term muscle protein synthesis. I'd probably recommend more frequent meals, better quality protein. But it also, a couple of the articles suggest that this idea of more frequent exercise is also going to be of benefit too, because every time we're exercising, we're getting a little bit of that spike in the protein synthesis. And so we talk often about, or at least I talk often about my philosophy about more frequent exercise. And so as we're aging, this idea of exercise snacking becomes more important, getting more frequent, regular physical activity, but also maybe dividing up those exercise sessions into shorter, more frequent sessions. So, splitting up the routine rather than a 3-day-a-week whole body workout, doing minimum of 6 workouts, splitting the body parts up, or doing fewer exercises in each workout and having maybe work the same muscle groups on a more daily basis. or splitting up workouts to doing morning, afternoon kind of workouts. I think that, and it's not necessarily supported in the literature because it just hasn't been the research done on that, but that would be my suggestion when it comes to trying to best counter anabolic resistance as we age.
It's also not as intimidating if you're taking on like a giant project at work. If you break it down into little mini projects, you're still getting the overall big project. I'm assuming it's the exact same concept. Instead of killing yourself in the gym for 2.5 hours, you just get these little micro or mini workout resistance training sessions throughout the day. And it goes back to what about Bob in your classes, those baby steps, right? Instead of one giant leap and diving into this huge workout where you're killing yourself, just adding those little mini workouts and baby steps, you're still getting the overall goal.
And I think you actually get more quality and quantity of stimulus to muscle hypertrophy by going more frequent because you're less fatigued. You aren't rushing through things. You're not having as much carryover fatigue from one exercise to the next. And I think it just overall is far more beneficial. And it's interesting too, in one of the studies, they cite, I think it was, is it Mark Trappy or Mike Trappy? But they cite a study in which they kind of looked at the use of NSAIDs over a regular use of NSAIDs over a period of time. And historically, I've always taught that taking NSAIDs can have a negative effect on your muscle hypertrophy because when you have muscle damage, it tends to block some of the more pro-inflammatory responses within the muscle that can limit protein synthesis. And there's pretty strong support of that. But what they showed in the research was that we actually see some of the opposite in the aging population. And they're not quite sure of exactly what's going on there. And they do state that it seems a little bit out of what would be their normal hypotheses. But what we're seeing is with regular use of like acetaminophen or ibuprofen, we actually see more growth in the muscle. And I think actually, if I recall correctly, acetaminophen had a better effect than ibuprofen. But I think what's really going on there is not so much that those medications may be having an effect on increasing protein synthesis, but because we take those, there's less pain in the exercise, and we may actually be able to do a little bit more exercise because we are kind of regularly taking those NSAIDs. And because we do more exercise, we may see an increase in the protein synthesis, or rather than quite the same increase, but less of a decrease in protein synthesis as a result of the NSAIDs.
Could there also be other factors with acetaminophen being a blood thinner? The blood is able to go to the muscles and carry those nutrients a little bit faster, or would that be irrelevant?
I think that in the big scheme of things, that's probably irrelevant.
Okay. Because I know a lot of people, when they're trying to get a pump at the gym, they take like nitric oxide to get more of a pump, to get that blood flow, to get those nutrients to the muscles. I was just wondering if perhaps acetaminophen might have the same effect.
And I'm not sure that acetaminophen is a blood thinner. I know aspirin is.
Oh, okay.
And so I think the bottom line here really is do more resistance training, get more protein in your diet, and get adequate sleep.
So to conclude this episode, anabolic resistance is not necessarily an inevitable part of aging, but it is a common physiological phenomenon observed in older adults. While aging is associated with changes in muscle mass, strength, and metabolic function, many of these changes are influenced by lifestyle factors rather than being solely determined by chronological age. Factors such as sedentary behavior, poor nutrition, chronic illness, hormone changes, and other lifestyle habits can contribute to anabolic resistance and accelerate age-related muscle loss. However, engaging in regular physical activity, particularly resistance training, and consuming an adequate protein intake can help counteract anabolic resistance and preserve muscle mass and function as individuals age. While anabolic resistance may be more common in aging populations, it's not inevitable, and its effects can be mitigated through lifestyle interventions by adopting healthy habits such as regular exercise, balanced nutrition, and overall wellness practice. Individuals can promote and maintain muscle health and function, and, of course, age well.
Thank you for listening. I hope you benefited from today's podcast, and until next time, keep aging well.